Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Beyond the Cage. I am your host, Jim Graham, and joining me on the line, we have a special guest. He is fresh off his victory at UFC 188. He is Mr. Johnny Case. And Johnny, thanks for coming back on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Jim. I appreciate it.
Now, last time we had you on was back in January, just before you fought Frankie Perez. So before we get to your win at UFC 188, I kind of wanted to go back to that fight for just a few minutes here. And I remember when we were talking, you were excited to go to Boston. You had never been there before and see the city. So how was Boston? And obviously, what sights did you get to see while you were in town?
Boston was really cool. It was the coldest place I've ever been to, that's for sure. And really didn't get a chance to go out and really see the city and really get to take it all in. But the fans were awesome, heavy Irish, background, and everybody was real respectful, and it was a real good atmosphere and real fun place to fight.
Now, looking at the fight there against Frankie Perez, in my opinion, it just seemed that you had complete control over him and that he wasn't really offering you much. You just got in your rhythm right away and were just picking him apart. And then, of course, you had a few takedowns mixed in there well up until the finish there in the third round at the 154 marker. And for you, was there anything you think you did wrong?
Definitely. Yeah, I made some mistakes, and I think it's important to not be too critical of yourself, but to see where you can improve at. And I definitely did make some mistakes, I feel. Just so happened that he didn't capitalize. But I noticed, and I immediately went to work on that.
Now, of course, when we were talking before that fight, you had the several opponents change or whatever, but when it actually came time to fight Frankie there in the cage, did it seem like you missed anything, even though the short notice for the fight?
Nah, not at all, man. I never really worry about my opponents. I watched a couple of the fights. I see, how they like to fight. Do they like to kickbox? Do they like to grapple or whatever? But then after that, it's really not about my opponent. It's about me, and it's about what I need to do to make sure I'm prepared to win the fight.
Now, of course, as you mentioned there in Boston, they had the huge Irish Catholic contingency there to see the big main event there, Conor McGregor. And what did you think about the fight and just kind of all the crowd reaction stuff when he finally stepped into the cage there in Boston?
It was sweet, man. It was great energy, and I enjoyed talking to the fans after the fight more than anything. They had that heavy Irish accent, and a lot of them had been drinking, and we're all excited. So it was just cool. It reminded me of your kind of stereotypical Irish fight fan.
Now, of course, just to stick with Conor for just a second, he has a big fight coming up this weekend against Chad Mendes for the interim featherweight title. What are your thoughts on that matchup?
I think that's going to be a good matchup. I don't know. I got to go with the wrestler here, though. I think Conor's fighting style, he likes to fight more from like a karate stance with his hips turned away from his opponent, and it's going to be tough to defend wrestling that way. It's hard to sprawl when you're turning sideways, and the guy's got a good power double. So I think that's going to be a tough fight to defend. I think Mendes has really got the upper hand here.
Sticking with UFC 189 for just a second, one of your teammates there at Team Alliance, Jeremy Stevens, he'll be fighting on the card against Dennis Bermudez. What do you expect from Jeremy come Saturday?
Complete domination. Nothing but what Jeremy's capable of, and that's going out there and knocking him out.
I know one of your teammates was supposed to fight here at the end of the month, that being Miles Jury. He had to pull out due to injury for his fight at UFC on Fox. I was wondering, do you have any updates for us on Miles? How's he doing?
No, I don't know how he's doing. I know he's kind of he's in the training room, and he's doing what he can, but I don't know how he's doing on the injury or even what was injured. To tell you the truth, I just kind of checked in on him, make sure he was doing okay, and I didn't really get into it with him too much on that. But, he seems to be doing better, and looking forward to his next fight.
This weekend, besides UFC 189, is the whole UFC International fight week with a whole bunch of events. There's an Invicta fight. They also have the Ultimate Fighter finale. Whole bunch of stuff going on, including the UFC Fan Expo. So I was wondering, are you going to be in attendance there in Vegas for fight weekend?
Absolutely. Yes, I actually just landed in Vegas this morning, so I'm gonna make sure I go and help my teammate Jeremy Stevens and get his final preparations and get that weight off, and we're gonna go watch the kick some ass and enjoy some fights afterwards.
Jim Graham talking with Johnny Case here on Beyond the Cage, and let's get to your most recent fight here at UFC 188 against Francisco Trevino. Of course, you were supposed to take him on back in Boston. Like I said, he had a whole bunch of changes, but you finally got to take him on at UFC 188. And how good did it feel to kind of finally have that fight against him? Because like I said, there was some back and forth between you two there back in January when it was originally supposed to happen.
Yeah, that was awesome to get that fight and to not only, shut him up and make him eat his words, but to do it and go through adversity as well, and it was just good to get in there and show him I'm not just talking.
Now, of course, even though he lives and trains in the U.S. Mexican background for Trevino, did you kind of relish that role of kind of being the bad guy and taking out the guy there in his home country?
Oh yeah. That never really bothers me. I like going into other people's hometowns, with their fans and their family, and I kind of like being the underdog. There's a lot less pressure that way for me. He's the one that's got to perform in front of all his friends and family, and I just got to show up.
Now, of course, mentioned several times, not only on the undercard portion that you fought there on Fox Sports 1, but also on the main pay-per-view card, the elevation there in Mexico City. And I saw an article that you were sleeping in one of those hyperbaric chamber tents, and you can tell us how you think it helped you, but just looking at the fight and how well you performed compared to some of the other athletes on the card, I would say whatever you did worked great because it looked like your conditioning held up all the way through for the 15 minutes.
Thanks. Yeah, I felt great the entire fight. Really, if it wasn't for the eye poke, that kind of made me panic a little bit, and that kind of got my heart rate out of control for about halfway through the second round. But after that, I felt great. No different than in the United States or lower elevation.
Now that you've kind of had that fight at probably the highest elevation you'll ever fight at in your career using the chamber, is that something that you feel comfortable now that if they book a fight again in Mexico City or Denver or Albuquerque, some of the other places with high elevation, that you kind of are like, all right, well, this will be my time because I know I'll have better cardio than my opponent?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I didn't notice a change really, no difference at all. And it was awesome being in Mexico City and just being there and experiencing the culture and the people and going to see all the sights and stuff. So yeah, if they asked me to come back, I would love to. It was a pretty amazing trip.
Now, of course, like you said, the big kind of turning point for you was that eye poke there early on in that fight, and obviously, that did affect you. Did you have to have surgery or anything on that or anything?
No, luckily I did not. That was actually the eye that I had a detached retina in previously, and then when he poked me, everything kind of went black, and that's why I panicked. I was like, oh shit, not this again. Now I'm gonna have to go through surgery. I'm gonna have to do the whole process over. So that's what panicked me. But luckily, it just turned out to be a scratch on the cornea and a couple of antibiotics, and rested up, and pretty much back to normal. It gets a little cloudy from time to time, but for the most part, it's back to normal.
Now, obviously, you had some good striking going on in the fight against Trevino, but the big difference in this fight, you were able to land 4 takedowns against them that really cemented you getting this unanimous decision. Was that kind of the game plan to kind of mix up more of the wrestling in this fight?
Oh, not at all. No, I was looking for the knockout, and I think it was just a matter of time. Prior to the eye poke, it was just a matter of time before I would have got the knockout. I'm pretty confident when I say that. But after the poke, I couldn't see him. I couldn't judge distance, and everything was real blurry. So, I just had to get my hands on him and control the fight on the ground.
Now, of course, as you mentioned, you got there a little over a week before the fight. So, obviously, you mentioned you got to see some of the sights and sounds there in Mexico City. And what was it like down there? Obviously, they say not to drink the water. So, what was it like down there?
It's different. It's just everybody, you know, the culture's different and the laws are different. You know, it's more or less like a common sense law. You know, if you don't think you should be doing it, then you probably shouldn't be doing it. And everybody's just real respectful, and it was just really cool to see the culture and the pyramids and all the old cathedrals, and it was just amazing. I had a great time, and yeah, can't wait to go back.
Now, how good were the tacos? You got to tell me. I haven't had an authentic Mexican taco from Mexico, so how good were the tacos there?
That's the thing. I didn't even get to eat any.
Oh,
I know. I bummed out. That was like my whole goal too. After weigh-in, like, I gotta get a taco. I gotta get some tacos. Never even got them. So, well, I trained in San Diego, and that's got, you know,
that's
some of the best tacos in the world too. So, absolutely.
Looking at the main event that went down there for UFC 188, Cain Velasquez against Fabricio Verdum. Great performance by Verdum. He ends up becoming the undisputed heavyweight champion. What were your thoughts there on that main event?
Man, that was an incredible fight. Two tough sons of bitches. I remember seeing Cain just get rubbernecked by punches like 2 or 3 times, and just thinking, how is he standing? You know, and the same for Verdum. You know, that was the best performance I think anybody's ever seen out of Verdum. Not just with his submission finishing, you know, which everybody knew he had, but his striking. He just looked phenomenal. He just went out there and just really just keeps getting better and better, and deservingly the new champion.
All right, Johnny, you're now 3-0 in the UFC, and usually when a guy gets 3-0, they usually see a step up in competition. So are you looking to kind of make that next leap here in your next fight and take on someone near or maybe in the top 15?
Yeah, let's do it. I mean, you know, at the end of the day, I'm just here to make money, you know, and everybody in the UFC is tough, you know, a name, and whether the guy's 3-0, 4-0, you know, whether he's top 10, whoever the UFC wants me to fight, and whoever they're paying me the most to fight, I'll sign and I'll show up and I'll give my best.
Is there anyone particular you like to have for your next fight, or just kind of whatever they throw at you?
Man, yeah, I don't really have any names right now. I just really want to travel. I want to go into other countries. I want to go to Brazil. I want to go to Australia. I want to go to the UK. And that's really my focus right now. You know, just go see the world, make money, make some memories, and just see how far I take this in my first year.
I'm going to throw out a guy that maybe you're not thinking that. I just think it'd be a tremendous fight because both of you are such tremendous stand-up fighters. But I think a guy that has made a lot of buzz since moving up a weight class to the lightweight division, I think you against Dustin Poirier would be a tremendous matchup if somehow that could happen in the near future.
The Diamond Poirier, that would be a good fight. Yeah, he's a tough guy, and yeah, I like the way he fights, you know, striking with submissions, and yeah, I think that would be a great fight.
All right, I already talked about the main event of 189, but the co-main event is for the welterweight title between Robbie Lawler and Rory McDonald. I was wondering, how do you think that one was going to play out?
I got to go with the champ, Robbie Lawler. You know, back from Iowa. You know, I got to stick with the roots, and I just don't think Rory's got what it takes to take him.
All right, now, of course, the fight you had at 188 will be the last fight you will do where you're not going to be wearing Reebok. Your next fight, you'll be decked out in the Reebok gear. And obviously, they launched the unveiling of the Reebok last week with the new fight kits and jerseys and everything. So I was wondering, what did you kind of think about the unveiling, and are you looking forward to donning Reebok the next time you step in the octagon?
Yeah, whatever. I mean, that's what we got to do. That's what we got to do, I guess, you know. I'm not really ecstatic about the whole thing, but, you know, they say it's for the best. Well, we'll just wait and see.
Have you seen your, jersey or anything, or your potential fight kit?
I have not seen them, no. I saw some of them, though. I wasn't really impressed. They're pretty generic, and I don't know. I didn't like them too much, but that's all right, though. I don't have to like them. I just got to go kick some ass in them.
Well, as far as we know, they didn't misspell your name like Gilbert Melendez and put Gibbler.
Gibbler? Yeah, I don't know. And now he's suspended for a year, so I don't know.
Maybe they were foreshadowing, right?
Yeah, maybe they were.
All right, I'll get you out of here with this, Johnny. Of course, I know when you mentioned when we talked back on Halloween, you went to dressed up with your boys as Spider-Man, so I know you saw Avengers this summer, so I was wondering what you think of Avengers 2 this summer.
I have not seen it yet, actually.
Oh,
I haven't had time. No, I really need to do that, though. I need to, I just haven't had the time to take the boys out yet.
All right,
make time for that, I suppose.
You'll definitely have to see that. Ant-Man 2, or Ant-Man's coming out as well this summer. Definitely have to check that.
Yeah, that looks like a good one too. Absolutely.
And I did notice, I did want to mention this before I let you go. You had your brother fight recently, and I believe he won back home in Iowa. Is that correct?
Yeah, he won by knockout.
And so is he? Have you heard anything about him like moving up to the UFC soon to join you, or anything like that?
Yeah, that's kind of the goal. That was his last amateur fight. He's gonna take a couple local professional fights and see how that goes, and gets 3 or 4 wins. He's gonna move on out to the the gym I'm at, and he's gonna give it a run. And that whether he does good or whether he fails, that'll totally be on his shoulders. Yeah, but he's definitely got the talent. He's definitely got what it takes if he just wants to do it.
He is Mr. Johnny Case. You can follow him on Twitter at Hollywood Case. And thanks again for coming on the show. Really appreciate it. And I'll probably talk to you again when you get that next fight booked.
My pleasure, Jim. Thank you for having me again.
Once again, that was Johnny Hollywood Case right here on Beyond the Cage.